The town of Milford was the kind of place where people stayed. Not because they loved it, though some did, but because leaving felt like a luxury that belonged to other people. People in bigger cities. People with connections. People with money. MaYA CHEN had grown up hearing this idea so many times it had almost become her own thought. Almost. MaYA was 32 years old when she decided she was done being almost. She worked at Hargrove's Hardware, the family store her parents had opened decades ago. She knew every bolt, every hinge, every type of wood stain on the shelves. She loved the smell of sawdust and oil. But she had another love, one she had kept folded up small, tucked behind her ribs like a secret. She wanted to design buildings. Not just houses. Buildings that told stories. Buildings that felt like they were growing out of the earth, rather than placed on top of it. She had dozens of sketchbooks. She filled them in the evenings after closing, sitting at the worn kitchen table with a cup of tea that always went cold before she remembered to drink it. Curved walls. Living roofs covered in moss and wildflowers. Skylights that followed the angle of the afternoon sun. They were beautiful. And they were invisible. The change came on a Tuesday in November, when a woman named Dr. Renata Fields walked into the hardware store looking for copper piping. Dr. Fields was an architect. Not just any architect. She ran her own firm, Fields and Associates, which had built a library in Portugal that looked like it was breathing, and a community center in Nairobi that had won 3 international awards. MaYA helped her find the piping. And then, because she couldn't help herself, she said, "Are you here for the old mill project?" Dr. Fields raised an eyebrow. "You know about that?" Everyone knew. The abandoned textile mill on the edge of town had been empty for 15 years. There were rumors it would be torn down. Others said a developer wanted to turn it into luxury apartments. "I've been thinking about what it could be," MaYA said, and she felt the words come out before she could stop them. A community hub, with a vertical garden on the south wall to provide food for the neighborhood. A public workshop space for the hardware skills that are disappearing. And a rooftop that opens to the sky for events. Dr. Fields was quiet for a moment. "Do you have drawings?" she asked. MaYA almost said no. That small, familiar word rose up in her chest, ready to protect her from disappointment. But she thought of the sketchbooks. She thought of all those cold cups of tea. She thought of 32 years of almost. "Yes," she said. "I have drawings." She ran upstairs to the apartment above the shop and came back with 3 sketchbooks. Dr. Fields stood at the counter and turned the pages slowly, without speaking. When she finished, she looked up. "You're not an architect," she said. "No," MaYA said. "I never trained. But you think like one." Dr. Fields closed the last sketchbook and tapped its cover once, thoughtfully. "I'm hosting a design competition for the mill project. It's open to the public. The town council wanted community involvement. You should enter." MaYA opened her mouth. Dr. Fields held up a hand. "Don't say no yet. Sleep on it. The deadline is in 6 weeks." MaYA didn't sleep on it. She lay awake thinking about it, which is a different thing entirely. She thought about all the reasons not to enter. She had no formal training. She had no software, no professional tools. She was a hardware store owner in a town most people had never heard of. Then she thought about the mill. She had walked past it since childhood. She had watched the windows go dark one by one. She had imagined, for years, what could live inside those thick stone walls. She entered the competition the next morning. The 6 weeks that followed were the most exhausting and alive she had ever felt. She taught herself basic design software on a second-hand laptop. She read books on structural engineering. She called her cousin, who was a horticulturalist, and talked for hours about which plants could grow on a vertical wall in their climate. She revised her drawings 30 times. Her mother thought she had lost her mind. Her father, who had always been a quiet man, came downstairs one night at midnight to find her working and placed a fresh cup of tea on the table beside her, and this time, she drank it while it was still warm. The competition had 47 entries. MaYA didn't win. She came second. But Dr. Fields called her the day after the results were announced and said, "The winner is a firm from the city. They'll do fine work. But your concept, the garden wall, the workshop space, the way you thought about who actually uses this town, that's what the mill needs. I want to bring you on as a community consultant for the project. And I want to sponsor your architecture studies." MaYA sat down on the floor of the hardware store, right between the paint aisle and the shelf of door handles. "Why?" she asked. "Because the best buildings," Dr. Field said, "are designed by people who understand what a place actually needs. And you've been paying attention to this town your whole life." MaYA CHEN didn't leave Milford. She stayed, but now she stayed differently. She studied at night and on weekends. She worked on the mill project for 2 years, walking its stone floors, listening to neighbors talk about what they wished they had. The vertical garden went up on the south wall, just as she had drawn it. Tomatoes and herbs in summer, kale and winter greens in the cold months. The workshop space opened with a class on woodworking for teenagers who had never held a chisel. The rooftop held its first community dinner on a warm June evening, the whole town spread out below it, the hills turning gold in the last light. MaYA stood at the railing and looked out. She had a sketchbook in her hand. She was already drawing the next thing.